My young friends, my name is Sanjit Shetty. I head a company called Soham Renewable Energy India Private Limited. The reason I have so much respect for this institution is, especially JC's, I've graduated now 23 years ago, and the teachers who taught me are still teaching. To be in this profession for about 2.5 decades itself is an achievement. Because what you study will get obsolete after a few years, and it's a continuous process of learning. I have now been working for over 2 decades. I'm just going to Harvard right now. So to go back to a business school, Harvard is the leading business school in the world. They have a very prestigious program called Owner President's Program, which you have to apply for. About 300 CEOs across the world apply, and about 100 get selected. So I was one of them. And that's what I was telling Sir now, that this process of learning, my friend, should never stop. It's just, and entrepreneurship also is like a journey. It's not a 100 meters race, but it's a marathon. You just keep running. Now my entrepreneurial journey started, soon after my engineering. I was lucky. My father himself was a very dynamic man, so he headed Vijaya Bank, and I could see that the people who was to come to my house, and I would see leading industrialists, and my father would always tell me about them and how they grew. So that sparked the spirit of ambition in a youngster like me. And soon after my engineering, I told my father that I don't want to work for somebody, but I want to work for myself. Because my father, I saw him, he worked for an institution for 5 decades. But I said I want to choose another path. So I decided to be an entrepreneur soon after my engineering. So and I graduated in 90, so it's been 23 years today. And my journey has been very interesting. Yes, entrepreneurship, as Sir said, is a bed of thorns. But there's always a sweet smell of roses along the way also. There's so much you can do by being a business owner, because you control. If you're a government servant, you work for somebody else, you always have to answer to higher ups. Here you have the power to do it on your own innovation, your own inclination. You can make things happen, and that's what I've done along my journey. And I hope to talk about it during the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour. By the way, I'm just going to talk a little, and then I would like to open it up for questions, because that's the best way for you to really, and just ask me anything, except my bank balance. But please ask me anything. It's a very open session, and for me, when I was on that side, I gained the most when I used to ask questions. So please do so. So my first business was, Mr. Ramesh, he said manufacturer of beverages, but it was manufacturer of alcoholic beverages. So I didn't know if you left it out but I'm a teetotaler. But I looked at it, I ran it, there was a distillery which had a license. It had actually run down. It was in Udupi. So I went there. As I said, it was an old dilapidated shed. I had to go and clean up the place, get brand new equipment. And it was in the center of Udupi town. So you can imagine, to have a distillery in the center of a small town, there was a lot of local resistance. So, and that was my first brush with entrepreneurism, where a lot of locals got together, formed a committee or a samiti, and then tried to, fight the setting of the distillery there. And they said, no, you're going to do nefarious activities, you're not going to employ anybody, and we don't know what's happening inside. So So I started, because I had proper permits, I had the government's permission. I started recruiting people. 6 months down, I asked this whole samiti, I said, at any time of your choosing, please come inside and tell me if you see anything wrong. Don't even tell me you're coming. Just come, because that's how transparently I want to run this organization. Please come at your time of choosing. So one day at 3:30, 7 elderly people just marched into my distillery. and and just went around it. And I said, I'm not even going to come with you. Go to consume it myself because I was a teetotaler. But I tried to get respectability into a business that many considered very dirty. And I actually left that business nearly 10 years later because I also was not happy, because a lot of it was based on evading taxes. And I didn't want my career to be based on something evading which is rightfully belongs to the government. So that's been one of the hallmarks that I've been doing over the past. Differentiate yourself from the rest of the distilleries and the rest of the products would be to make a great product. So, always a good product has to have the right source. So I spend a little more on getting the right, the mother spirit. I came from Nanjangud, and even though I would get it from close to Bangalore, I chose it to come from Nanjangud because I knew the source. The source was very good. So obviously, if the source is good, the end product is also going to be good. Got a product, made the distillery, created branding, and that time a lot of we could not sell the product ourselves, so you had to have your sales and distribution network, which is your wholesalers and retailers. So a lot of them would take credit. So the retailers would sell the product immediately and get cash on hand. But they would take 6 to 9 months credit from us, 6 to 9 months. And they would use that money for their, they would lend it out. So most of the retailers became money lenders. So for me as a youngster, it was a great experience because this was all about learning, all about dealing with officials, which I said, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, these are the things I'm going to be facing sooner or later. So I wholeheartedly embraced that challenge, and I built a product, built a brand. But eventually, I said, this is not my career. In between, I would come to Bangalore, and my friends would talk about going for higher studies abroad. That was the first time I said, I must innovate. And that's the second thing about me, is I keep trying to innovate myself. Is it about myself or about my company? I love the word innovation because you keep changing. And the minute you are stuck in your rut, that's when this decline happens. And I always believe you have to keep innovating yourself. Innovating can happen by having a new product, learning a new skill, improving your bottom line, your top line, your revenue and your profitability. So innovation has been key with me. So when I mean innovation, what I actually mean is, if I felt my business was not doing too well, I tried to get involved with organizations where I could help people. There was a phase where, I had a lot of difficulty in raising equity for my first project. In that period, I got associated with Entrepreneurs Organization, which was a huge time commitment, but I gave it because that EO got me in touch with about 50 to 75 fellow business leaders whose learning to me was invaluable. Plus, their connections with the banks, and so that's what I mean by innovation. So I didn't want to stay stagnant. I always wanted to keep improving, keep doing new stuff. So, so during this journey, one of my things that I wanted to innovate was to keep studying. So I decided to do an MBA. This was, early 90s. There was no internet. So today to do an MBA, you just, go on the web, you have so much information, you have blog sessions, you have Twitter sessions. So even when I conduct interviews, in the next half an hour, it's already on the web. Someone has already posted what sort of questions Sanjay Shetty asks. So that time there was nothing. We used to wait for the hard brochures to come from foreign universities. And we used to judge a school by how good the brochure was, how thick GSM the brochure had. So we would judge schools by that. I was lucky. My father, I had a great relationship with my father, and I said, I want to go and see some of the schools before I actually take admission. So he said, go ahead. So I went to the US. I did a lot of interviews with business schools. I don't know if you're aware of a school called Wharton. Wharton is University of Pennsylvania, which the Ambanis went to. I actually got admission there. But Wharton was a very big school. I just finished my interview. I remember with Wharton, they told me, Sanjit, before you leave, we will give you the decision. So they called me and they said, congratulations, you've been accepted. I said, thank you very much. I have 3 more days of interviewing, so let me get back to you. They said, listen, but we are Wharton, we don't like to wait. I said, you've got to wait because I've already fixed up with these people, and once I've committed to coming to the campuses and I've fixed up interviews, I have to go through with them. So they said, sure, fine. So I went and one of the schools I saw was Duke University, and Duke University is a much smaller school. And that's what I like about smaller programs, because you get to know your teachers so very well. The same thing that happened to me in my engineering here. Today it's 23 years since I've graduated. Mr. Ramesh calls me and, I have nothing but to say sir to him, because that's the respect I have for him, for Mr. Srinivas Prathad and everyone, because today I know the interest with which they taught us. So for me, the whole concept of going to a smaller school was very much attractive. Even though in rankings it was much below Wharton, and profile also was much below Wharton. So I went into Fuqua for my MBA, and I decided that's another thing. Whenever I get involved in something, I just put my heart and soul in it. I said, you live for the present, you live for the moment, make the best of it, because in a couple of years you're not going to be here anymore. So that's another piece of advice I give all my friends here. If you're in an institution, if you want to make an impact, it's only you that can make an impact. You should not wait for others to give you a way forward to do stuff. Do it yourself. I joined Fuqua. It was the 2 most fantastic years of my life, because first time I actually went and studied overseas, and I saw the quality of what an MBA really does, because companies would come and recruit. I got involved from day one. I became what was called the president of all the international students in the university. I was involved with diversity council, admissions. I used to help companies come to campus to recruit students for their companies. And literally wherever I got an opportunity, I would get involved. I didn't do that well in my studies. Contrary to what you said, over the years my photographic memory skills got depleted, but I decided I said there are other ways of contributing. So I actually did a lot for school. I learned rugby. So that's another thing in the US. If you play a sport, you really become, your adaptation to the local students becomes much faster. And they didn't believe that, an Indian student could be 6'1.5" and, weigh, so many X kgs. I don't want to tell you that also. So I played rugby, and believe it or not, the school press would write about an Indian student, because Indian students are known to be, fantastic in math and sciences, but never a student who would actually play rugby. So I played rugby, and I mean, the 2 years were fantastic. So eventually, when you graduate, so when you graduate, the students actually vote. Who would you like to vote as your class valedictorian or your graduation speaker? Whom would you like to see speak on graduation day? And the students voted, the faculty votes, and eventually the dean decides on that. And I was chosen as the graduation speaker that year. And in the 40-year history, never has an international student, leave alone an Indian, has been chosen for that. And I did that because I think my friends there saw me get involved in everything I did. So for me, it was 2 years about making friendships, about relationships. Even today, I have friends in different parts of the world whom I can just go and stay with them. So that's another thing. When you are in great institutions, always look to your right and your left, because this is your network for the rest of your life. And you will make more and more friends, but some of these friendships, I mean, I have Narayan there. Today, I tell you, I can trust him with everything in my life. He's been with me for 25 years, and one of those guys, he knows I have a bad temper, but he listens patiently, but he knows that whatever I say in the best interest of the company. And he's been such a source of strength, sir. I mean, one of the greatest things JC could do for me is to give me an RM, because that's what friendship is all about. It's just not friendship. It's about camaraderie. It's about comradeship. And he's just been one of that. And that's why, even through my MBA, I decided to make, friends with everybody. Because, I said, this is my time. This is my time to learn, to give, and to make friends. And that's what I did over my 2 years. When I was graduating, since I got a lot of companies to come and recruit on campus, I also managed to get 3 very good job offers. And the leading was Ernst & Young. They wanted me to be a consultant in New York. They said, I'm talking 95. They said your starting salary is going to be $175,000, which in those days was very big money. And so I was all kicked, like everyone. I had a small romance in my class. I liked one of my colleagues. So I said, this is my life. I'm going to stay back. I'm going to get married here, and I'm just going to live the American dream. I still remember I was about to, give my acceptance to Ernst & Young, and my aunt called me who's my mother's sister, whom I was very, very close to and still am. And she said, I'm told you're joining Ernst & Young. I said, yes, I am. Are you happy for me? She said, I'm happy for you, but not for the family. So, and you must keep this in the backdrop. I've been I've been very close to my parents, very close to my father, who I consider today as my best friend. And I have a younger brother who's 10 years younger than me. So I was the elder son, and my father, we had started the distillery, remember, which was going into a lot of problems. In my absence, this distillery went and made some wrong decisions, and it was going down. And my aunt said, your father will never ask you to come back, but I think the family is in trouble. I still remember that weekend, because on Monday I had to give my acceptance letter. It was the toughest weekend. But eventually I took a call that I will give up my job offer in the US, and I came back to India. Because I felt, especially because my father is not the one to actually tell me, son, I need you. When I would speak to him, he said, no, everything is fine, just enjoy yourself, we are so proud of you, and X, Y, Z. But I knew he was hiding something, and so I decided to come back. And the next 7 years were the most challenging for me, because I tried to start many businesses, Narayan is smiling there because he knows we tried to do so many different things, because that was the entrepreneur in me. I didn't want to give up. I said, there will be some hope for me, I'll do something. So first thing I did was I cleaned up the whole mess of my distillery. I decided it's time to get out. Took the tough decision. And that's another big thing for entrepreneurs is to actually sell your first business. It's very, very tough. Because you've put your heart, soul, your life, your family's savings into it, and you don't want to sell that. So that was the first thing, but we have to, your head should rule your heart, and I decided to sell that business. So, sir, how is that? One of my favorites again, So you evoke the same response from students even today than you did 23 years ago. Same personality. Whatever he had. 19? 90. Enterprising entrepreneur. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. It's amazing. 23 years ago. Same teachers are here. So really, hats off to all of you all. Really, it's amazing that you are still here.
You see, you have to learn so many things from him. This is the time. Use that opportunity.
Anyway, sir. So where was I? I was at. So I came back, cleaned up my distillery, got a good, yeah, there are chairs also. tell me if I'm going on and on, sir. If you want to start question and answers. So I'm.
Were you asking any question?
It's an open center. He wants the students to come out.
So if you all have any questions, till now you can ask me, or you want to keep it till the end, whatever. Should we keep it at the end? Okay, thanks. So came back, cleaned up my distillery, sold it to my partner, took that seed money, tried various businesses, IT education. Finally, me and my dad decided that let's do something that that is good, that is clean, which the nation needs. So we chanced upon renewable energy. This was, I think, late 80s. Renewable energy and energy was the upcoming sector. So Devagowda was the Prime Minister of India at that time. So they decided that below 25 megawatts they're going to privatize. Earlier it was all the government doing these projects. They decided to privatize it. And at that time, I sold my distillery. In between, I said, I was really, it took its toll, this whole rehabilitation of my distillery and selling it, that I decided to go back to the US. I worked there as head of business development for a firm in Washington, DC. Had a great life, great learning. And one day, I used to play a lot of squash at that time. So I used to play at the Capitol Hill Club where all the senators and the Congress men and women used to work out in the gym and play squash. And I became close to a couple of the congressmen. And one of them said, someone is coming, I just got an invite and someone is coming from your state of Karnataka to speak to us at the Capitol Hill Club. Come as my guest. So I said, do you know who it was? He said, no, some politicians. I said, being an entrepreneur is always good to know politicians. Home state, they will be nicer to you in US rather than they're in their home country of India. So I went there and it was actually a business delegation which had the likes of Mr. Vijay Mallya, Mr. Kirloskar was there, a lot of industrialists, along with Mr. Jayesh Patel. He was the chief minister of our state. And so it was very interesting, Mr. Jayesh Patel in his true fashion came in a silk jubba and a silk dhoti. And you're sitting in the Capitol Hill Club and he didn't care. He said, this is how I am. This is my national dress in my state. I'm going to come like that. But he was sitting in a corner. Nobody was talking to him. Everybody was dying to talk to Vijay Mallya. Because of his flamboyance, his style. Everybody wanted to talk to him, including the congressman I came with. He said, no, forget your CM, introduce me. So yeah, and that's another thing that all entrepreneurs, you have to look for a window of opportunity, and that was my window of opportunity. I went to him, I said, Sadan Shettur Maga. I said, oh, I don't think he recognized my father at that time, but I think he was feeling so neglected that when he found someone being nice to him, he was like, So, but then he realized whose son I was, and I had the most interesting 2 hours with him. In fact, he said, this is getting so boring, He loved to have a drink in the evening, so he said, can you take me out somewhere? And I said, sure, sir. So we went to, but I said, so you'll have to change your attire for now, because some of the bars and pubs will not allow that in. So he said, surely. We went, he changed, and that actually changed my life that evening, because, I told him I'm very keen on coming back to India, but there are not many opportunities. Because he was saying, what are you doing here? Why don't you come back to India? The economy is opening up. And I said, sir, I was in the distillery business, I didn't like the whole process of evading taxes and, making a lifetime of it. So I sold that, that's why I'm here. So he said, don't worry, I'm going to look for something. Now, when a politician says that, how many of us actually say he's going to remember? So I said, no, sir, thank you very much. I dropped him home. He was like, he was very happy. 10 days later, my dad calls me. And he said, guess who called me to his office? Mr. Jayesh Patel. And he said, you tell me what you want. I want your son to come back. So my father at that time was trying to get these renewable energy projects. And he said, sir, very grateful to you, but I'm struggling with these projects. I'm trying to apply for them. He called the chief secretary. He said, this is the former chairman of a bank. His son is an MBA from a top 10 school. These are the sort of people we want to be leading industries in our state. Please see how you can give him this permit. I got the permit, my father got it, and he said, I think it's time for you to come back. So where I was having a good life in Washington DC, I said, oh my God, I gotta go back now again. So anyway, I came back happily. We started this, it was a renewable energy project in Uttar Kannada. That is a phenomenal district. It's called North Canada. Some of you are maybe from there. Some of the most intelligent people come from that district. That district, you're smiling, are you from there? Are you from there? Okay. Some of the most intelligent people, the district is one of the most beautiful because it has got untapped forests, and beautiful. But, please correct me, the infrastructure is so bad, the roads are so bad, And I always, when I lived abroad, I always believed and I always loved the concept that whatever nature has, it should be for the benefit of the citizens. It should be for the wild animals also, but as long as you know how to live with them and don't harm their habitat, it should be for the common citizen to enjoy, So we went there and they were opposing mini hydro projects. They said large scale submersion. I said, sir, the whole concept of mini hydro is that we don't displace people. It has an eco, enviro and people friendly angle to it. So why are we, and then, I cut a long story short, many things happened. So I used to keep addressing public meetings. So, I would go with my Karnataka Renewable Energy Development Limited, MD out of Bangalore, and we would go drive 7-8 hours. Mr. C.S. Vedant was there, right?
Yeah.
We would drive 7-8 hours, go all the way there, have this room full of people like this. So, so they would say, okay, now MD will speak, so I would speak. And suddenly someone after 25 minutes would say, Dikkara. So, one person starts, 10 other people join, So, and then suddenly everybody started, and there's no way, my personality nor my voice could, control that. So, then we would go back. Next week, the person who said Dikkara would come to my office. He said, sir, I'm sorry, but some of these people are instigating me, but I want to be your friend. That friendship has a price, So, if you pay this price, I'm your friend for life. Youngster he's come back from the US, got a great MBA, got a great engineering degree from JC, wants to make something out in India. So I said, okay, sir, tell me how much it is. Okay, so tell my father, who's dead against all this. He said, no, we need friends in that area. So go, he became my friend. So they say, okay, so come after 2 weeks again. 2 weeks again, we drive for 7-8 hours. Go there. He's sitting right in front, smiling at me. And again, after 25 minutes, his cousin says, Dikkara! And I said, this is not going to happen. So eventually I said, it's, maybe the will is not here to do projects. And I remember Narayan once we were trying to do some survey there, and he had a red t-shirt on. So they used to think of him as Kemp t-shirt now. So that was his nickname in that area. So anyway, I said, my whole business model was about doing things with local people's blessings. And if I didn't have it, I didn't have the model right to do a business. And either the mindset changes or I have to look somewhere else. That's the time I went back to Mr. J.S. Patel and I said, sir, you trusted me, you gave me that, I can't do anything with that license. I have gone and had so many public meetings, but I don't seem to be making a headway there. So he said, okay, he said, give me some time, let me see. So he actually called the chief secretary and found out that what I said was indeed true. I had made efforts. And he said, he called me, a month later and he said, surrender those licenses that you have and I will give you this license in Jog Falls. So that was my first journey. I got this license in Jog Falls, which is Southeast Asia's largest waterfalls. Some of you who haven't seen it must go and see it, but during the monsoon period, because it's beautiful. During monsoons, it's beautiful. Off monsoons, it's just a big slab of rock, sadly, but you know, that's the truth of it. So I got my license, and I decided, you know, that was another thing for me. I always, whenever I set up a business, I never decided to sit in Bangalore. When I started my distillery, I didn't want to sit in Bangalore. I actually went to Udupi and lived there. Similarly here, when we started the Jog construction, I took up a small guest house there. I took up a small guest house, and I still remember it was a forest guest house. And you must understand, humans have encroached into forest land. So what that means is, you know, there are lizards, and there are ants. I mean, literally this big. I mean, this is forest land, you know. So the ants are also gigantic proportions. So, and you know, I would wake up in the morning, and believe me, you know, I would be covered by at least 20-30 ants. That's when I realized, you know, they were coming from the legs of the bed onto the person sleeping on the bed. So then we again decided to innovate. I put 4 cups of oil on the 4 legs of my bed so that no ants could go up. That was innovation number 1. Then it was about coming through if God forbid your bed sheet touched the ground, because then they would come through the ground, you know. Then I said, okay, it's time I not invade their property, and then, you know. So we looked at a small guest house, built the project. I actually built a 4-kilometer long tunnel. So today, my project has been commissioned. I started construction in 2004, commissioned it in 2007. I think I did it in record time. It was 3 years, but I had 3 seasons of floods and 1 season of landslide. I have seen what nature can do, and that's what has really made me respect nature. And I'm so glad I'm in a business that actually helps preserve nature, because when nature takes its toll, when it becomes angry, see what has happened in Japan and even the most developed countries, when nature decides to rear its ugly head, nothing can stop it. I have seen a 40-ton excavator being taken up. It was on the sides of it was on the banks of the river. The floods came, lifted the excavator, and just threw it in the middle of the river. I mean, you know, I'm not near 40 tons, but people like me will just be, you know, just flown away. But that's the power of water. So we decided to do the project, and to raise money was very interesting. Now Enron had just happened. This was 91, 92. 2002, 2003. Enron had just happened. Nobody wanted to invest in India's energy story, because most of the investors were from the US. They said India is not, because Enron actually had got a license to build a large project in Maharashtra. I think you must be too young for this. They had a large project, got a large project to set up in Maharashtra. Politicians didn't allow it. US was angry with it. The government was angry. They decided to withdraw that project license. Of course, after a couple of years, to our good fortune, it came out that Enron was actually was a fraud company. You know, they actually have shut down today because they were illegally trading their shares. So, so Enron had just happened. Nobody wanted to touch the Indian power sector. Indian power sector was being done by professionals, the NHPCs, the NTPCs, the BHELs. The government-owned companies are doing projects. No private people. Here comes a young man with no experience. A lot of enthusiasm, but no experience. So, and nobody wanted to give us money. I, you know, went to State Bank of India. You know, they have something called SBI Caps, which actually is like an investment banker who raises money for you. It goes to other funds and institutions to raise money. So they actually, I hired them. I had Ernst & Young, who also had a investment advisory business. But we tried a lot for a couple of years. Nothing happened. One day I just, you know, decided to go on Google, and I put renewable energy financing. On page 3, I got a directory. which gave me, possible funders of renewable energy projects world over. It was a directory of 200 addresses. I wrote to 200 people, of course, cut and paste. And 4 people responded to me. One of them was a fund out of the US, a clean tech fund, had just set up their Singapore office to cater to projects in Asia. So their MD thought, he was also he had grown up, he's an American guy, but grew up in Japan, which has they think a lot like us, customs, superstitions, they say, oh, I've just set it up and today only this email came, must be a sign that this is a good scheme. So that was my good fortune. It landed in George Sorenson's desk. He wrote to me, he said, listen, we have just set up this fund, Mitsubishi is my main investor, Japan's Exim Bank is one of our investors, all blue chip clients. This is who we are, would you like to partner with us? I said, I'm very keen. That time was my worst time in my financially as an entrepreneur. I couldn't afford to fly down. Going in a train to Bombay would have taken a day. So going to Bombay by train would have taken a day. I couldn't afford flights. So someone told me, Sanjay, go on this Air India flight at midnight. There is this Air India midnight flights from Bangalore to Bombay. They cost you 1,500 rupees, where the ordinary ticket was 7,000. This is 1,500 rupees because this is actually a flight that goes from Bangalore to Mumbai and Mumbai to Sharjah. So this Bangalore-Mumbai is just a feeder, Bulk is from Mumbai to Sharjah. A lot of people, and they like people to get off in Bombay, so that they don't want to have empty seats Bangalore-Mumbai. But they want full seats from Mumbai, Sharjah. So it's great, $1,500. So I went to them. I used to take these midnight. It starts at some 12 something and reaches at 1 something. So you would sleep by the time you reach. I used to stay with my cousins. Reach your house 3 o'clock and you had to be in appointments at 8:39. So it was an interesting time. So I told them I'm very keen and so. In the meantime, I started getting to be very good friends. Here is my relationship angle again with the MD of the local fund. He was an Indian guy. His name is Anand Prakash, and he, I can never forget him because he really taught me how to build. To be an entrepreneur, you got to have a great idea. You got to have an idea that works. You got to have an idea that actually makes a difference to people's lives. So, so if I'm generating power, it actually should generate power well, and it should generate power and not get stuck in bureaucratic red tape. So you should set up the projects. Second is build a great team, team. So, so that's when, I had Narayan, but then I started going to professionals who were retired professionals from KPC, KPTCL, sold them my idea, and other people, and I always wanted to work with the most credible designers, so I approached Tata's. Their fees were very high, so I said I could not pay their fees, but some of those guys whom I would go and talk to liked me, and they said, listen, if you're building your team, go to this gentleman, he's leading that company. So, word of mouth, I got to know a few people, and I sold them my dream. I said, see, today I'm nothing, but I'm setting up this 22 megawatt project, which is a 100 crore project, and so if you support me, I will make sure one thing, that I will give good salaries, and tomorrow if there's an upside, I will share it with you. So some of them said no, but some of them said, you know what, I think you have a good product, you don't mind leaving our jobs and coming and joining you. So I set my team up and I started making pitches to investors such as Anand Prakash of Clean. He did what is called a due diligence. Due diligence means people do accounting due diligence, legal and financial, besides technical. That means they understand. So technical due diligence would be understanding the technology, what sort of machinery, what is your designs, what sort of civil structures you'll be building. Will it actually generate so many million units that you're saying in your detailed project report? Legal is a company being paying it all its dues? Has it been structured well? Is there any gray areas in structuring? Accounting is, what sort of, have I been defaulting in any of my tax provisions? So they do a 4-pronged due diligence. They did it. It took about 9 months. Finally, they decided, yes, we like you. We are putting our money in. They gave me 16 crores in 2004. Started construction. 2007, I commercially operationalized the plant. In the spirit of innovation, I had 2 options. I said I could sell power to the government, where I would get a tariff of 2 rupees 90 paisa per unit. Or I could try, and that time Indian Electricity Act of 2003 had just come into force. So they said, which allowed private industries, private generators, to sell power to private consumers. Under the provision of the law, we studied the act properly. I started talking to lots of friends who owned industries in and around Karnataka. And one dinner, I was meeting with a friend for dinner, and he was telling me about the high tariffs he has to pay. And I was complaining about the low tariffs that I get. So I said, this is amazing. The person generating is not getting tariff. The person consumer is complaining the tariff is too high. What is happening in between? So we understood that the middle was being eaten by the government. So then we understood how we could avoid that cross subsidy. And so they invested in my company. It was a great investment for them. They came, so they actually bought some of my investors' equity. So they came in with 15 crores and they exited 2 years ago, and I gave them 55 crores. So, in a span of 7-8 years, they tripled their investment. So, and that's another thing that has always helped me in good stead, and I thank my father for that. I've taken money from investors, but I've always paid it back, and I've always honored my commitment. And I strongly, if someone were to take advice from me, I said, take money, pay it back, give the returns that you have promised. Because if you're going to make a business, believe me, the investment community keeps talking to each other. And they are always looking for credible people to lend to. Because their biggest fear is that people take money and don't want to give it back. And then it is a very expensive and long drawn out court legal process to get their money back. So the fact that I took money from investors and paid back has helped me raise 3 rounds of private equity. Today, my first round was 15 crores in 2004. My second round was with a New York-based large investment hedge fund, where they gave me 60 crores. And in 2000, that was nearly 4 times, in 3 years. And in 2010-11, I took investment from SBI Macquarie. Macquarie is the world's largest infra fund. They have tied up in India with SBI and IFC Washington, which is part of World Bank. So it's a very blue chip investor, and they gave me 375 crores. So you must understand, this money only comes in as equity. I can take 3 times more as debt. So if they give me 375, I can nearly take 1,100 crores as debt and build projects for 1,500 crores. So that's what it does for me, because every project is conceptualized of debt and equity. So this is only the equity part. So, but what has helped me raise money is, again, great concept, execution. So I have actually executed whatever I have started. I today have 2 commercially operationalized projects, one in Jog Falls, one in Mangalore. In fact, the one in Mangalore was a project that was abandoned. This entrepreneur was in the aviation space. Thought, renewable energy projects is all about annuity income. That means once I set it up, my generations will earn on a monthly basis. And decided and really learned that this is not the way that business runs. Started the projects, had to abandon it. I had to take over the project. And it's very tough to take over an abandoned project, because people who work for the project are disgruntled. contractors are disgruntled, government is disgruntled. So you have to first pacify all of them. Then some of these guys, when they have built something, if they have, it's such a pain to actually, you have to actually demolish it. So concrete to chip is the toughest than actually pouring fresh concrete. So we had to actually, Narayan knows, we had to break down many of the old structures, rebuild the project. So today I have 2 commercially operationalized projects. I'm building 5 others, 3 of which are in active construction. One of which is outside, it's in Srirangpatna in Mandya district. It's on Kaveri River. It's a small project. It's 6 megawatts, but beautifully designed project. It runs because KR Sagar leaves water right through the year for irrigation and drinking water needs. So this project has water right through the year. So that's what we as a company, what we stand for is we like to do projects that don't displace people, that are eco and enviro friendly. So we don't cut trees and we don't displace people. While doing that, we are very, we like to do projects with the best contractors. Tata Consulting Engineers are my main designers. They are 4 times more expensive than the other designers. I say, you know, always pay the 4 times more when you set up a project, because that project is going to last you for 50 years. You know, a project well set will run for 50 years. You know, I raise my debt, my lenders from the banks are SBI. So credibility is very important. I have investors, I have an external board, and for total transparency, I have Ernst & Young who does my external audit. I have KPMG who does my internal audit. So any investor, when they come in, they love to hear all this. They like to know that the money that they have given to someone is in safe hands. He builds projects, he will return it, and he runs a very clean company. And that's what, you know, it's come at a cost, but I always tell my team, this is what is going to help us in the long run. And, you know, I mean, when they were introducing me, they said I'm a great entrepreneur and I've achieved all this, but I have achieved nothing. This is just the journey has just begun. The beauty is there's so much more to do, there's so much potential. I love my country, I believe in nation building. I will get into politics sooner or later. I was in JC, I was a class rep. At Duke, I was the president of international students. I became part of EO at the chapter. I'm a chapter chair. Next year, I'll be the president of the YPO, which is 120 CEOs in Karnataka. I'll be the president of that chapter. And you know, 5 to 10 years down, I want to get into politics, not for the money. I would have already, I hope, made my financial base secure for my family. And then I really wanted to make a difference to the country. I say this, and they always say, always state your goals. You may not achieve them, but once you have stated it to an outside audience, sometimes you're held accountable to your goal. And and I keep saying it, I want to do this, and I hope to achieve it. While doing that, very important part of my business plan is, yes, we set up projects, we set up good projects, we execute them well, we raise money from leading institutions, our designers are the best in the business, I sell my power to private industries. But something that is dear to the heart of all my employees is my foundation activities. So today, we actually set up Soham Foundation in 2003, when we were actually, 2002, 2003, when we were constructing my Joke Falls plant. And one day I was going to my plant and it was raining very heavily. I saw about 10 kids standing under a tree, so I was in a jeep alone. So I said, why don't you come and sit with me? And so I was dropping them to the school, so I was talking to them. They said, no, actually we are about 25, but when it rains, only 10 go to school. And we have to, when it rains heavily, we wait under trees. And when it stops, we walk, then we wait, we walk, like that. And he said, these kids were telling me, our sisters, our elder sisters, stop coming to school during the monsoons. So I decided to, set up a transport service there. I set up my own vans, which picks up kids from all the neighboring villages and drops them to school. picks up the teachers also and drops them to school, and in the evening drops them back. So, excuse me. This helps school start in time. This helps kids reach on time. This helps kids reach school fresh and reach back home fresh also. So that, was 25 students today, about 75 kids use that. And then one day I was talking to, a college, high school at Jobe, and they had no clue of what a computer looked like. So I said, maybe I have a role to play there. I tied up with Azim Premji Foundation. Today they give me software, I give hardware, I give teachers, and I run computer education in nearly 35 schools. My mandate is to add 2 schools every quarter, so 6 schools every year. But today, we've grown, we nearly touched the lives of nearly 8,000 kids. But in that whole scope of things, I must tell you once, and this is why I like initiative from my employees. We work in rural Karnataka. We know what is really happening there. And we also come across some villages which have no power. And they have no grid connectivity, and they will not be connected to the grid for the next 5 years. So, we identify villages such as that. And actually, Narayan sitting here, he liaised with the central government. We got funds, and we've actually set up with street lighting and house lighting for at least 2 villages in very rural hamlets, thanks to Narayan. He actually set that initiative, and we call it the Nani. So that's been my journey. It's always been about learning from your peers. What has really helped me is working in teams, but being very patient. Because the system is very inefficient. Don't expect, things to happen overnight. But I tell you, I sleep well at night, and because I know I can touch the lives of hundreds and thousands of people. I get them here thanks to your respect, thanks to respect my teachers, whom I in turn respect. I will respect them for the rest of my life. They have given me, and I'm here because of what I've achieved. So being an entrepreneur also has a lot of dividends. You create employment, you create a great product. Today, people remember the biggest companies that you remember today. Most often they'll be started by an entrepreneur. You talk about GE, entrepreneur. You talk about the biggest steel plants, entrepreneur. You talk about telecom, entrepreneur. You talk about power, entrepreneur. Unfortunately, government is the unsung hero. It's a private individual who knows how to brand and make that brand last forever. I also tell my team that we live in a very ambiguous setup. Don't expect results overnight. Live and learn to live in ambiguity. Don't let it frustrate you. And I think these are the few things that have helped us. And personally, I love the fact that I continuously learn. 23 years after graduating from engineering, for example, I did my MBA 7 years after graduating engineering. Today I'm doing my second MBA from Harvard University. It's great to learn, and because so much has happened over the past 2.5 decades. And it's great to go back to the student experience. I love to sit on that side and love to hear about what's really happening today. That has really helped me, and that's been my journey till date.
So my young friends.
If you have any questions, doesn't matter how intelligent or stupid it is, it's only the question at the end of it. So if there's anything, I'd love to answer it.
What made you do this much of passion? So what's the background of it?
See, first of all, you have to have passion. To be an entrepreneur, you have to be passionate. So that's a very critical ingredient, Otherwise, the system will frustrate you. So what has been my passion? My passion has been to build an organization. Money will follow. I have now actually set up my business. It's been operational since 2007. 6 years. I have made a lot of profit. I have not taken 1 rupee as dividend. I have not taken 1 rupee as profit. I only take a salary. Because everything has been plowed back into the business. Money will come in time. Build an organization. I think, and that's what sometimes frustrates me about, when I see politicians, they get a mandate to do, they get sweeping mandates, They can really, but half the time is about making money and doing, a bad job of it. But, if they really build a product or build an organization, build a nation in that case, their generations will be remembered. Look at Mahathir Mohamad. He was not known to be clean. Mahathir Mohamad was also, he made money on the side. But does anyone remember Mahathir Mohamad as being corrupt? They think of Mahathir Mohamad as having built modern Malaysia. Lee Kuan Yew, my hero, but he belonged to a smaller country.